Welcome, Roy Osing, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Any better, it would be illegal.
And I'm so glad you have such a wonderful personality. You and I had an opportunity to talk before the podcast a little bit, and I typically don't do that with guests. We typically just get straight into the recording. You have a very interesting way of thinking and a different mindset, and I think people are going to love it. And today I have you on as a life and business coach, and you do so much more with your mentality of be different or be dead. And we're going to be getting in all of that just briefly. In your own words, can you describe the work that you do and how you help people?
Yeah, so my life has been spent trying to figure out how to differentiate organizations and individuals from a crowd. And I'm finding that the world is really a copycat world, quite frankly. Most of the time is spent copying best in class and best in breed, et cetera. And the problem with that is all you're doing is increasing the herd every time you copy somebody, and you're not introducing any uniqueness and coolness. And so my work is all about trying to help people understand that they can be special if they make the right choices. They can stand out. And when they are able to do that, they win, whether it's people or organizations, same deal. So that's the kind of journey I'm on. And to be different or be dead piece is simply to say, if you don't figure out how to stand out, then you're going to have a real tough challenge. And the ultimate consequences, certainly in the organizational world, of not being able to separate yourself from your competition is you die. You just go out of business. Not a pleasant place. The same principle applies to careers and personal development, quite frankly. You get stuck, and getting stuck isn't a fun place to be. So I try and help people get unstuck.
The whole journey of that like awakening moment where it's like we want to be different. We don't want to be like the crowd. We don't want to be like society. And I think it's different for everyone. For me, it happened in high school where I was very structured and I had my groups of friends and I would be around them and I conformed. I conformed to be like them because to be different was to be killed. And you didn't want to be made fun of or ridiculed or have this type of peer pressure over you, especially in high school. You wanted to conform. It wasn't until I said, I'm done conforming and I'm done being a part of the crowd where I decided to be brave and to go my own way. I think a lot of people, they have a difficulty being brave or being different because being different means that you have all these eyes on you. Where if you just have a regular 9 to 5, you drive the same car that everyone else drives, you wear the same clothes that everyone else wears, then you're just part of everyone else. No one's going to look at you in a negative manner. They're not going to look at you in a way where they feel offended or that they feel they're threatened. I think we are so worried about people's emotions and well-being, and we stop looking at our own well-being and our own life. So we don't act in our days. We simply sit down. We don't take action because if we take action, then it's going to put us ahead of the crowd, ahead of the herd. In our world today, we don't like leaders per se, because if you're leading, then it's an opportunity for us to look at you in a different light. But if you're with everyone else, you're just like everyone else. I kind of wanted to get your perspective on that herd type of mentality, that herd type of thinking, because you're completely right. When we think about if we just are like everyone else, what's going to differentiate us from other people?
Well, first of all, the journey isn't for everybody. There are people, and I'm not prescribing it as such. I'm simply saying that if, as an individual, you're looking to grow either your life or your career or your business, there's a way to do it. And it's not about blending in, it's about standing out. And there's a ways of figuring out how you can separate yourself from the warm, cozy, comfortable herd mentality, right? But if you don't want to go there, that's fine. My problem is that people talk about wanting to go there, but they don't change their behavior. They tend to rely on the same old pedantics and textbook principles that have been espoused for decades. And there's a huge momentum and inertia around sticking to those principles, okay, which is, comply, conform, let's not offend, etc. Being different isn't about offending people. It's not about what you were born with. It's not about what you look like. It's what you choose to do with what you've got in a way that people care about. And that's the key principle here. And so if you want to figure that out, there's a way to do it. But if you don't, that's okay too. And I keep saying to people, I'm not a be different advocate just for the sake of being different. It's a means to an end. Being different in my world, the way I describe it, the way I've applied it, is a mechanism to be successful. That's it. And you don't have to go there if you don't want to, but there's some really cool ways that you can actually achieve something like that if that's the journey you want.
And when someone's getting ready to make that change, if they really want that change, because committing to change is very important, because if you kind of go in it with a half heart or just maybe an idea of, oh, this would be a nice thing rather than it's something I really want to commit to, it happens a lot with New Year's resolutions, right? People say they want to do something, they do it for maybe a short term, maybe a couple months, and then they stop. Even change, we give ourselves an opportunity for change. We give ourselves action for change, or this idea of change, that conscious choice for change, but we don't go through, we don't follow through. What are your steps to helping people be different and then staying committed to being different?
The first thing I have to say is the journey is not an intellectual one. It's an emotional one, and it's one that involves the heart way more than it involves the mind. We think too much. Okay, we don't do enough stuff. Being different is looking for ways to stand out and actually executing some imperfection, right? Executing imperfect fast is the kind of thing. But there's some learnings for me. The first thing is people need to figure out how to create stuff, not copy stuff. You can't be different if all you're doing is Googling everything and copying what other people are doing, right? Like, you just look at what happens. Well, let's see. I want to develop my career plan. Well, let's go to Google and find and get a template. Well, I got to tell you, in my world, I sat and I probably saw millions of resumes in my life, and most of them were a cure for insomnia for me because they put me to sleep, because they all look the same, because everybody uses the same template. So, one thing for you guys out there, if you want to be different, if you want to stand out and use this as a means to success, the first thing you have to do is get rid of this whole notion of copying other people and actually believing that it's a source of innovation, which is ridiculous because you're just fooling yourself. So, get rid of the copying mentality. The other thing is you need to know kind of where you want to go. Like, being different, again, is a means to an end. So, it makes a difference where you intend to go in your life. And in a career sense, whether you want to be a marketing, blah, 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 or you want to be business development, or you've been in sales, you need to have that sort of vision and view as to what the end point sort of looks like, even though it's going to be foggy and hazy. And that's just the way it is. You can't have clarity in a world that is not clear, right? In a world that changes so fast. So you got to kind of have that notion. And the ultimate tool here is, and I had to create this myself in my businesses and in my life, it's called the only statement. It's not about saying that, well, I'm better, or I'm the best, or I'm number one, or I got great conflict management skills, because everybody uses what I call that claptrap. Michael, it's claptrap. It means absolutely nothing. And the people that use those comparatives and superlatives to define and describe who they are and how they stand out, it doesn't work. So I had to create something different. So it's called the only statement. Really simple. Goes like this: we are the only ones who. I am the only one who. Okay, so what it does is it's a binary thing. It doesn't have superlatives and comparatives. It's a declaration of only, the one of a kind, only, unmatchable, that whole notion in there. And when you can actually create an only statement for yourself based on, again, where you want to go and what that implies, it's powerful as heck, because you stand out raw naked in the wind, I tell you, when you have an only statement, because people can look at it and they can judge as to whether or not it's true and whether or not it addresses something that they care about. And that's the other part of this. Again, we're not wanting to be the only one for the sake of being the only one. It's got to be the only one that does something that people care about. And those people are your targets, whether it's business customers, whether it's career, what I call the foxes, the people that make the career decisions in an organization. It has to address that sort of scenario. Get rid of the copying notion. Try and develop an only statement. Go to my website and learn about it. I've been blogging this stuff since '09, mate. So it is not new. It's lots of content on my website to go check it out and start doing it and converse with me. Can do that really easy. I got lots of people sending me emails saying, hey, Roy, here's my personal only brand. What do you think? I just think that's awesome. And so that's where you kind of want to go. You get this only statement together. It's a draft. It's always a draft. It's never going to be permanent, because the world never stands still to allow you to have permanent anything, right? So the beauty is you just kind of morph it and you kind of move it and shake it with the way things go and your success as to whether or not it's working the way you want it to work or not. And it just ends up to be a do loop. You just get your only, you try it, you live it, you execute on it, and you just kind of revise it on the run. I call it planning on the run. And so those are a couple of ideas. But you know what? There's a lot of content that I created in my life around this, and I would really like people to go and check it out.
And of course, and at the end of the episode, we're gonna definitely drop all those links for you and tell the audience where they can find those links. But for now, really diving just into the conversation, the nitty gritty of be different or be dead, and looking at the inception of people conforming or people becoming just one type of unit. I was a teacher before transitioning into coaching. So I was in the schools and I saw just how much those students conformed from when they came in, when they were kindergarteners, and how free they were and they were individualized, to how they morphed and became part of the herd. It's amazing. And it's one of the several reasons. I mean, there's many reasons why I left teaching, but the conformity aspect was one of them, because the limiting beliefs were something that many people conform to also. And what I do is I aim to turn around those limiting beliefs that we were given as children from our parents, from our teachers, from society, and to really focus on how can we not look at those limits and then see the other side, because anyone can say you can't do something, Roy. Roy, you can't do this. You can't start this business. That's crazy. I'm sure the person who made the first cell phone or is talking about the first cell phone or even the first rotary phone was viewed as crazy. It was that craziness that allowed them to be different and to change the world.
Well, I mean, Steve Jobs wrote a beautiful piece called Here's to the Crazy Ones. And it's absolutely that theme. And it is so right. Look at education today, and I'm tough on education around this subject. It has sucked the life out of people's desire and motivation to actually step out and do something wonderfully unique in a way that people care about. Because it teaches you, if you want an A, this is what you have to do. You're absolutely right. Drives conformance and drives compliance. I looked at it from another point of view. Like, I used to get all of these people coming to me out of the education system wanting a job, wanting a career. When I observed them, they were struggling. And they struggle today in terms of figuring out their special, unique niche that will not only make them happy, but also add incredible value to the world. They're having a hard time because of the way they've been taught. Okay, color inside the lines, dude. Do not color outside of the lines. Otherwise, you get a C minus. Well, that's a powerful motivation to stay inside the line. And so I talk about, look at, let's try some things. How about doing a 180? Let's do a 180 to what the books say. Let's do that. And there's plenty of examples around it where of people that are doing 180s. They're contrarian minded. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Heart Attack Grill in Las Vegas. It's a classic example of an organization that has done a 180 on health. Now, I'm not advocating you should be eating these great big, super burgers, these triple bypass burgers. That's what they call them, by the way. But the point is, this guy said, hey, I can see where the herd's going. I'm going to do a 180. And so his business has got servers dressed up as nurses. And I mean, it's just a classic environment. An example on a different level of being contrarian. So look at things through a different lens and say, how can I do this differently? And one of the options is I'm going to go exactly in the opposite direction of everybody else. I'm going to try and discover the benefits of contrarianism. But people don't teach you that, except my book. My books have that in there. In practically every chapter, they say, look, you got to step out and be contrarian. Just give it a whirl. It's extremely liberating. It's kind of a way to force discontinuity into what we've been taught, because we haven't been taught to be contrarian. Hell, don't ever be noticed. I mean, look at our mother said, Roy, do not come home with a note from the teacher that said that they noticed you doing something. The other point I want to make here is it's painful. It's painful to be non-compliant because you got all of that stuff in your backpack, right? From when you were 6 years old and started the journey, you got to unpack that. And it's so painful to do that because at every turn, people are pushing you back, pushing you back, pushing you back. And the only way you can keep going is you have to have a high pain threshold. You just do. And you have to be obstinate, right? And committed. And you got to be different running through your veins. If it's not running through your veins, you're never going to do it. And it's tough because that's simply not the way we've been taught. I think it's going to be a long time before major progress is being made. But it's like when I say progress, it's about shedding the shackles of compliance and getting into this be different, wonderful world of doing things that people want in a different way. It's probably a societal and a cultural change, to be honest, Michael. I think it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's through conversations like this that we actually can make a difference. I'm hopeful.
Definitely. And it's about having that conversation because I think sometimes people they just give themselves a mindset, they give themselves a script or a scenario and they say, "Oh, this is going to be the way it's going to be." Look at the pandemic. It's a perfect example of a script or of people just following the herd. You have to do this, you have to do that. And I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I was so resistant to it because they said you couldn't leave the house. And I'm thinking, I'm leaving this house. You're not going to stop me. Where I'm big on health and fitness, where I like running, I like going to the gym. They closed the gym down for like 3 months, and I bought all this exercise equipment for my home. You're not going to stop me. But there's many people who said, "Oh, well, the scientist said I have to stay home and I have to be still and I have to not do anything." You know what happens to people who go into nursing homes? They become still and they deteriorate at a rapid rate because their mind doesn't have anything to look for anymore. There's no purpose, there's no mission in their life. So their brain says, well, what's the purpose then? What's my purpose? Just to be here? To sit in a bed or play chess with someone or to eat and stay alive and to be in the same floor? Because when you're in a nursing home, you go to maybe two floors, your floor and the bottom floor for recreation. I worked in a nursing home for 6 years. So I know, and I saw people coming in and I saw how it affected them in just months from when they're going in, their eyes were so alive. And then just in a couple months, their eyes were sunken, almost dead because they were just doing the same things, the remedial things. And many people, they just kind of go through this monotony of life. They wait for Friday and they hate Monday. And they're going to keep on doing this 9 to 5 type of rat race because that's what they were told to do. They don't want to be different, but they want different results. So they want all the benefits of massive action, but they don't take massive action. So they simply follow along. They're good boys and good girls. And they say, well, I'm doing exactly what I was told and what everyone else is doing. So why am I not successful? Why am I not happy? Why do I not feel fulfilled or have a purpose or a passion? And it's because those same people are only looking at what the world says. And there's a reason why only 2% of the world's population succeed wildly. And it's because they are different. They decided to be some crazy SOB that says, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to shake the nest. And I don't care if the hornets come out because I have a suit or I have some wasp spray or whatever. You are ready for whatever comes your way. And I think many people are just not equipped mentally, even physically now, to handle that, to show up every single day. What were some ways that you decided to show up in your life? Was it more mentor or was it physical or maybe a little bit of both?
Well, I think it was a mindset that drove me to do what I had to do. And it was a mindset that I landed on based on the challenges, quite frankly, that I was facing in the business that I was asked to run. And so if you went back on it, just think about when the internet actually started and the challenges that that imposed on organizations. I sat in a national telco at the time and was asked to basically get the internet business going. And so when I looked at it, the market was growing fast, the applications were new, but there's a lot of excitement around it, and the competition was fierce. And so my conclusion was that if I couldn't find a way to stand out and be different in a way that customers cared about, I was going to be dead. We just weren't going to be able to make it. And so complying with best practices and all this kind of stuff just wasn't going to work. And so I had to do that. I had to come up with an only statement. I had to come up with values that promulgated concepts like contrarianism and frontline focus and hiring for goosebumps and killing dumb rules and cutting the crap. All these kind of cool cleanse the inside programs of the organization that did one simple thing. It aided execution of the strategy that I had, and it drove incredible performance. So, what I'm saying is the need to be different was born out of the fact that it was the way that we were able to actually achieve the level of performance that we want. You have to have, I said it earlier, you have to have kind of like an end game in mind here. You're not trying to be different and stand out just because it's cool, just because it's something to do. It's a means to an end. And for me, it was always, I need to execute better and I need to drive amazing performance. That was my role as a leader. And so it led to crazy things that lit fires in people. I mean, I was viewed as a be different leader who loved coming up with crazy notions that people thought worked. And it wasn't all that complicated. It was a matter of listening to the people who did the job and doing what they told you to do. All right. It was just quite simple from that perspective. But again, I have to say, it's a choice, Michael. It's a choice you have here. And the people that say they want it but don't show and demonstrate the desire to do it in their actions, they're just fooling themselves. And I don't have a lot of time for them, quite frankly, just be whatever. But the people whose eyes light up when you talk about this sort of stuff, and they actually, you can tell they're leaning your way, those are the people that we need to help. And if we can help enough of them, we will begin to change the world. But it is a cultural, societal thing. There's too many narratives right now that work against it. There's too many narratives that think being different is wrong, okay, because it's imprinted with connotations of bad stuff that is against, whatever kind of narrative that you want to look at these days. There's a real big challenge to actually get currency and credibility of the idea in a world that has so many splintered narratives. Just getting attention and people to focus on that is really, really different. But again, you have a choice. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, if you want to see the light in this, it's amazing. You talk about development and growth as an individual. If you really want it, if you really, really, really want it, as viewed by what you do after we talk about it, then there's some pretty cool things that you can do to actually make some headway.
In my first motivational video, it's a video series. We're on season 5 right now, maybe on season 6 by the time this comes out. First episode, I talk about the idea of wanting something. I ask a question, a simple question. I say, do you want it or do you just kind of want it? Because a lot of people in this world just kind of want it. That's how we live life. We want something or we will not do what is necessary to get it. This is like an analogy where there's a business guy who is he's successful, and there's a young guy coming up. He's in his 20s. He goes, how can I be successful like you? The business owner looks this young man in the eye and says, you want to be successful like me? Well, meet me at the beach tomorrow at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, well, 5 o'clock in the morning, he's dressed in a suit and tie, thinking he's gonna go to some meetings and do some things with some people, right? He's thinking he's about to get it started. He simply looked at the young man and said, do you want to be successful like me? He goes, yes. He goes, okay, well, let's walk into the water. And this guy's in a suit, right? So he's walking into the water, suit, shoes, everything's still on. And he just walking in this water. And then now this kid's thinking in his head, like, hey, I thought you were going to help me be successful. Business owner says, do you want to be successful or not? And the kid's like, yes, I want to be successful. And then so he keeps on walking out. Now the water is a little bit higher. So it's up to his shoulders. The kid's like, wait, this is crazy. This is not what I signed up for. I want to be successful, not come in the water and get my suit wet. Well, business owner looks at him again and says, do you want to be successful? And he's like, yeah, I want to be successful. He's like, all right, well, keep going. So now this kid is swimming. Business owner's there. And he asks the kid again, like, do you want to be successful? And the kid's like, yes, I want to be successful. So he starts drowning him. So now this kid's fighting for his life, fighting for air. After a minute or so, he lets go and he tells the kid, when you want it as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. And that right there is the idea of, do you want it or do you just kind of want it? And a lot of people are not willing to fight for it as they would that breath. We think that every breath we take is just entitled to us, where tomorrow is entitled to us. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Why not do it today? We give ourselves this mentality of being complacent. And it's something that I aim to take away, because if people began to take more action, to be more refined in how they act and operate, then they can see their true strength. And I think finding your strength is important, because if you know your strengths and you know your weaknesses, then you can start to say, okay, this is what is more inclined to me or in line with me. And then from there, you can make the changes that you want to see for your future. And I think many people, they get stuck on what other people are doing, or that it's so hard. And I'm not saying that path to success is an easy walk and you could just do it with your eyes closed. It's going to be a lot of failure. It's going to be a lot of days of doubt, of feeling insecure. You're going to be lonely. It's a very lonely journey. I encourage people to take that road at least once, to try to see if you can do it. And as you said earlier, it's a choice. And not everyone's going to make that choice, because it's a hard thing for the subconscious mind to swallow.
We've been taught to intellectualize everything. What we're talking about here has got nothing to do with intellectualization. When you're out of air, you don't think about how your body is working within that environment. You struggle, you have to act to do something. That's what this journey is all about. And unfortunately, we've been taught to overthink things. We've been taught to think as opposed to do and try and fail and all that kind of stuff, because failing's bad. Okay, it's not good to fail. You need to be perfect, Michael. You have to be perfect. That's the way. If you want to win, if you want to be successful, You have to be perfect, which is another way of saying you need to conform to somebody's ideals of what that looks like, which is all bullshit, quite frankly. Let's stop thinking about stuff. I keep telling people you're pondering way too much. Ponder no longer. Just start doing some stuff. Figure out sort of what you want to do, sort of. Now, here's where sort of works. Okay. It says, I can't be absolutely clear on what my destination is because that presupposes I'm going to be able to predict how the world is going to evolve, which is crazy. So we live in an imperfect, chaotic, unpredictable world. Then why on earth do we set these clear, lucid, clear goals? It's silly. So I have this concept called let's head west. We're going to head west and we're going to start executing and learning as we go. So it's like plan, execute, learn, adjust. Execute, learn, adjust. It's Roy's planning on the run scenario. We will figure out through the process of execution whether the end point, the right destination, was Vancouver or San Francisco. But to actually sit in New York and be able to predict that in 24 months is silly. And yet we've been taught that, we got methodologies and all this other stuff. So the first thing we need to do is stop thinking so much about what we want to do. It's try some things. I mean, I have people saying, Roy, I got this opportunity, career choice here, and I don't know whether I should take it. And I say, well, what's stopping you? And well, I'm not sure whether it's consistent with my long-term goals. And I'd say, well, how are you ever going to find out unless you do it and learn from it, right? And so getting people to act, learn, react, learn, react, and people are really uncomfortable with it because there's not enough of us out there telling people that it's okay to do it. There's too many of them saying, well, you haven't thought this through. Thank God I haven't thought this through. If I was thought it through, I wouldn't have done anything. And isn't that the point? To start doing some imperfection quickly, learning, and then moving on. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and to do that, it's really exhausting to actually get up every morning and be confronted with challenges, thinking through your be different lens, saying, how can I do this differently? And then recognizing everybody that doesn't want you to succeed is standing there in your way, and you got to figure it out. It's definitely not for the faint of heart, but the rewards are incredible. And the more conversations we have like this, I think help gives people hope that there are some tools. We're not asking people to go do it. There are some tools. And I want to tell you, though, Roy's tools are not academic tools. They are practical tools that have worked in the real world. So if anybody wants to try stuff like this, like the only statement and so forth, you can do it with confidence that it's actually worked. Works for me, and it's now working for people that I work with in trying to help them on their journey. So there are resources that are starting to get developed, which is nice.
And going a step beyond just the simple resources of like the only method, but like looking at how we can change the system, because I think that's important too. Because if you just kind of fix a problem, like, with a band-aid, eventually, the internal guts of what's happening, it's just going to be even worse than if you just said, okay, I'm going to take some time and I'm going to fix what is the problem. So if you get shot, you're not going to just go to mom or dad and say, all right, just give me a Band-Aid, I'll be good, right? No, you're going to go to the hospital, most likely get surgery. The bullet's inside of you, you're going to get it taken out. And then the body's going to do what it needs to do. Many people, they just use that Band-Aid approach to their situations, their problems, their circumstances, right? Whatever it is. They say, well, what can I do? So it could be superficial things like materials that they buy that it makes them feel good. They cover up with material wealth. I'm going to have this house, this car. Or they say, well, I give myself this title. I'm the CEO of this company. This makes me feel a certain way. It doesn't necessarily mean you take action a certain way. It just makes you feel a certain way. In reality, it doesn't necessarily matter how you feel if you don't feel fulfilled at the end of it. Because many people who reach success, wild success, I've worked with them, their life is in shambles, alcohol, drugs, all of that. And I'm not saying how to live your life. You can live your life however you want. I'm not here saying you need to be Mother Teresa or something. You can choose how you want to live your life. Is yours. But then at the same time, how do you feel at the end of the day? How are you going to feel in 5, 10, 20 years? Are you going to have regret on your deathbed? And I think that's what many people, they want to avoid, but they don't do the actions necessary to avoid them. So they have regret at the end. All the things that they could have done, they wish they could have traveled more. They wish they would have taken more risk and started a business or went with that lover that they, once had, like an old flame. there's many different ways that we can look at the structure of who we're becoming. And I think it's important to understand the different types of tools where you have some tools that I think will be amazing for people and help people with their mindset and to help people with their life and their career. But then at the same time, we have to look at the societal type of system, the education system, the government, things that are going to be such a huge influence on the majority of people. I was just doing some research on the COVID vaccine, where I think like 68.5% of the adult population in here in the United States received the vaccine. So that means there's going to be about 30% of people who didn't get the vaccine. Not saying that they have to get it or that they shouldn't get it, right? This is your own preference. But there was 30% of people who decided that they didn't want it. And there were 68% people who said that they wanted it or needed it or they had to get it because of a mandate. That's the government system at work. In school, right? We look at the school system. You have to sit down. This is a tree. This is blue. You don't paint the sun purple or blue. The sun is yellow or orange, right? So we tell them, right? We give them structures. And I'm not saying that we should give them false information, saying, well, the sun is purple, paint it purple. You could be what you want, right? And this is also going into gender roles too. If you're a boy, you could be a girl. If you're a girl, you could be a boy, right? So we're giving all of these opinions where it's, what do you see, right? Because Picasso is going to make something different than Michelangelo. Who's right, right? Because if they have a different viewpoint or a lens in what art is to them, is their art wrong? Is their imagination wrong? And the school, what the school does is it strips away imagination. So we are no longer these people with these vivid imaginations or with these ideas or the ideals to be something or to do something. Because I'm sure many of the people who are listening, they have an idea, $1 million idea, maybe even more, where they can make something, do something, and then live in abundance, or at least to not have to worry about financial needs or woes, but they don't take the action, right? So we have to look at the system. And I kind of wanted to get your perspective on that. And you can take it any direction you want, just fixing the big problem and not just a blanket band-aid over the issue.
Yeah, you see, I'm not a believer that I'm going to wait around until the system's fixed before I go and do something. Because if that were the case, we will all be dead and buried for centuries. Okay, the reality is we live in a very complicated world. There are systems which we may even at best sort of influence, but the chances of making any big breakthroughs and so forth, I mean, it's possible, but not likely. I mean, I fought in a regulated environment in the telecom world for years. And I could have said, oh, well, we're regulated, so there's not a hell of a lot we can do. No, there's a lot we can do. All right. I'm not going to have that as an excuse for me not taking action. And I think there's a lot of people that actually do that. They say, well, it's impossible because the problem's too big. And that's because of government regulations, narratives, cultures, all this kind of stuff, equity, include all of these new HR stuff coming along. And that's a cop out, to be frank. It's a cop out. You have what you got. You are where you are. Okay, now you have to decide whether you want to make the best of it, whether you want to make a contribution in that imperfect, chaotic world or not. You can choose not to, but I'll never listen to you when you bitch to me about it. Okay, you've lost that right. You've lost that privilege. If you want to do something about it, okay, let's talk about some things that might work for you. Again, there's no prescriptions and no formulas here, notwithstanding the fact we've been taught to formularize everything in our life, by the profs at universities. What a joke that is. I mean, I don't believe any of that stuff. I'm a practical guy. There are practical ways of moving forward. And I'm not going to let myself off the hook by saying the environment within which we work is so complicated and so heavy that it won't let me succeed. Never let yourself get away with that thinking, because it's just an excuse for doing nothing.
And when you have all these people stepping into leadership, stepping into their power per se, and they start to take accountability for their actions in their life, and they become the majority, what do you think will happen?
Magic. When we see the right things, but okay, take a step back. This is all about being different in the way you do things that people care about. Okay, so that narrative would see the right things being done. Okay, if more of the right things are being done differently, then you're looking at progress. You're looking at innovation and creativity like you've never seen before. You're looking at maybe billions of Steve Jobs coming out of the woodwork. I mean, I don't know, but it's a heck of a lot more optimistic, in my opinion, than the inertia and momentum of where we are right now. Because the energy, okay, is to conform and comply and being different in ways that are not nice. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying being different in ways that people care about. That's the secret here. It's not doing things illegally. It's not doing anything. It just isn't. There's a huge piece of integrity here that I want people to understand. Right. This is a means to an end of success, making life better, satisfying people. It's not a means to making your ego feel better. Because if that's all you want, then you're not on my train. Go find another train.
And when you have all these people choosing to be different and doing all this work, don't you think the system will change too?
Yeah, it has no choice because the voice gets bigger. The voice gets bigger, and the amount of energy that gets bigger. It's look, I sort of liken it to changing the culture of an organization, all right, on a microcosm basis. It doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen, right? It will happen if all the warriors in that organization feel the same way, are doing the same things differently, and the energy is created. And eventually, what happens is the culture of being different ends up to being the culture, and it overtakes compliance, right? And it encourages people to step out and get rewarded for it. And so when you think about how difficult it is to change the culture of a company, think about how difficult it is changing that same culture for a country, right? A political system. I mean, that's why it's so daunting of a task, but one worth taking a step. I call it getting a nano inch of progress, getting an inch of progress fast. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, planting seeds with people, encouraging people to think about it, offering help, offering assistance and guidance along the way, with the belief that we will infect some people with the Be Different virus. Michael, we will. We just want to cultivate that. And that's the virus that I want to see in a pandemic. Do
Exactly.
you like that? I spun that kind of
Yeah,
nicely.
no, that was perfect actually. So when when we begin that change though, you are completely right because we get to choose what the outcome is for the culture, right? So if you have a CEO of a company and they see that their company is going in a direction that they're not necessarily overfilled with joy and excitement because it's not what they thought they envisioned. They want to make some changes. So they hire you and they say, well, I want to change the culture of the company. That's possible, right? We know that's possible. It's happened for many companies. So we see it as possible. But when we look at a country, as you said, it's a more daunting task. And it's very daunting because we have been tied in our old ways for thousands of years, probably at this point. We have to make a choice. It's like, do we keep going down this path or do we say, you know what, I'm done and we pivot? Most people are just going to keep on going and they're just going to do their little band-aid fixes. Is basically what I was saying. We give ourselves these band-aid fixes where it's like, oh, we'll do this or we'll talk about equality or we'll add a class at school talking about critical race theory, right? So we do these little things that they think is going to fix everything. But in reality, it doesn't fix anything because the real conversation is not being had. And the real conversation that should be having or be held is the conversation that you and I are having because this is a better wake up call than, oh, I'm going to change a class or I'm going to change the structure. I'm going to give more standardized testing. That doesn't help. That just puts you deeper into the system. And the system doesn't look at you as, oh, I want to make sure Roy's successful. I want to make sure Mike is successful because they're wonderful people. They're wonderful guys. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they are equipped by the time they leave school and they go off into their career, into their life, and that they can live in abundance, that they can have everything that they wish for, but they don't have the mindset, they don't have the mentality, they don't have the work ethic for it. Look at our culture today, our Gen Z or whatever generation we're in. We have a populace of young adults, 18 to 24, that don't want to work. There's a worker shortage in that age. They don't want to work. Just recently, I hired a babysitter. She's 19. She was supposed to come watch her kid for the evening. She never showed up. And it's not that she was busy. It was just that she didn't feel like working. It's one of those mentalities that our generation is just learning how to be weak. And I often talk about this quote, strong times create weak men create tough times create strong men. So it's kind of like that circle. or some variation of that quote. And right now, we have a society of weak young individuals, and they're basically paving their way to destruction to that point where they're not going to have a choice but to be strong. So they're giving themselves this hardship, this life, because they would rather have it easy. And it's easy to be on your smartphone. It's easy to be on social media, to do a TikTok dance or to be an influencer. But what are you really influencing? You're just being another cog in the wheel to society. You're just another person to look at. You might have a pretty face, but how long would that last? And I think many people, they look at the temporary moment rather than the whole aspect of what we do. We don't take effective action, we take some action. I'm just looking for the easiest path right now, which a lot of these young adults are. They're looking for the easiest option and they're not being different. They have to put in the work, right? So, how can we spark that initiative in our young adults today to take more action and to be different?
Well, I mean, first of all, let me just say that it's almost like we need to do some things in spite of the system. Because in the short run, in our lives, the amount of incremental change you're going to see in a system that, in a political sense, anyways, it revolves every X years and doesn't understand what longevity is, et cetera. It's almost like my view has always been, okay, I understand what the problems are. And notwithstanding that, we need to make a difference here and we need to move forward and seek rewards from what we do. And so if you're somebody, I don't care what age it is. It just, I mean, younger people, you just have to figure out a different way to talk to them because I do have a couple of Gen Zs, as you call them. I call them Zeds, but whatever. That's why there's chocolate and vanilla, I guess. So I have them and I have an opportunity to talk to them. Now, one of the things that I really like about, well, there's a lot of things I like about them, but one of the things that strikes me is kind of like the way they think about finances. As opposed to their predecessing group, they are highly financially focused and will actually challenge their older cousins who fall into a different set of demographics about what they do in their life. But the kind of thing that I do with them is this kind of thing. I'll say, look, if you want to kind of like step out, first of all, how big is your pain tolerance? Okay, if you're not willing to accept a lot of pain, I don't even want to talk to you. Okay, because you're not going to do anything. Because action does not come from the left side of the hemisphere, it comes from the right side, it comes from your emotion. So you need to do an energy check. Okay, if you don't have the energy, forget it. But let's assume that they do. Well, there's little things that you can do to be noticed. And by the way, let me stop right. It's okay to be noticed. It's not a bad thing to stand out and be noticed, irrespective of what society sometimes says. So there are some simple things you can do. First of all, let's think about what I said earlier. Let's think about that be different lens, okay? What I want you to do is every challenge that you've got, and I don't care whether it's on the soccer pitch or whether it's with respect to a conversation you're having with your mom, I want you to think about how you can approach this differently in a way that they care about, not just to satisfy yourself. I keep making that point. This isn't about you. It's about what you choose to do for other people in a rather unique way. So think about that. How can I do it differently? Secondly, how can I surprise this person? Because generally speaking, if people are surprised, they go, huh, well, that was different. In other words, the surprise factor kind of emotes a response that is a pleasant response to what you've done, right? Differently. And most people don't look at surprises as a source of opportunity because we've been taught to comply. I mentioned earlier, purge, copy, that word from your lexicon, your vocabulary. It's a C word that I never want to hear, right? And resist the temptation to go to Google to look for solutions to problems. I want you to sit down and think about it through your be different lens and come up with an imperfect thing and go try it. So it's that kind of conversation and it's highly organic and you get challenged by, well, will that work? Blah, blah, blah. The other thing that I try and do is take a principle you find in a book and give it a practical eye because there's a lot of sources of be different around formulas that you can say, well, yeah, but you know what? And linear regression analysis is a great one, right? The way to forecast that people have been taught, I just overlay my head west notion and say, put the formula aside. Let's figure this out by ourselves. So, that kind of a conversation for me has always worked in the sense of people going, huh, okay, that doesn't sound too painful to try and surprise people. Well, he's not suggesting that I need to reinvent myself. It's really about behavior and attitude. That's really what it is, right? The other thing is think short term when you're trying to be different. Don't try and be different in a way that's going to make you something 10 years from now, because that'll never show up. think about what can I do in the next 24 hours? Because I can observe that, I can measure that, I can feel good about that or bad about that. So think short term. Now, a lot of people say, well, Roy, you can't. You should think long term. Well, these are people that are thinkers, they're not doers. You don't think outside of the box, you do outside of the box. That's what being different is all about. It's all focused on doing. So these simple little techniques sort of work. And I say sort of work. They don't work for some people for a whole bunch of complex reasons, but they work for other people. So there are some things that you can do to get started on this. The other thing I like about it is these things give you immediate feedback. And we need that because it's such a painful journey and such an arduous task we're taking on to break loose of that herd mentality. But they do work.
The conversation that we have is always different here in Coaching in Session because we're talking to a different coach. It could be same life coach, it could be a different business coach, but the mentality, that is what we look for. We look for the wisdom that that person has because you can listen to the same episode over and over again, and I'm sure you're going to hear something different because it's going to resonate with you a little bit different. And I encourage you to listen to this episode a couple of times because you're going to listen to something the second time that you're not going to have heard the first time. I encourage people to listen on repeat because there's so many nuggets in here. There's so many seeds that could be planted that might not sprout today. They might not sprout tomorrow, but in time they will. But you do have to be brave. You have to be open. You have to be different. And if you can't be different, then that's where you're just going to be like everyone else. And in a world of conformity and of likeness, I want you to be different. I want you to not be like everyone. I want you to choose who you want to be. I want to thank you so much, Roy, for coming on and just, spending some time with us today, a little bit of your wisdom and talking about your mentality and of course, your be different or be dead mindset. But before we go, can you please leave us with any last words and then please tell how the audience can find you?
Yeah, so I would just say get a little more information. I've got a website, bedifferenttorbedead.com, of course. Come visit me. I've got some pages on there. I blog every week, so you can have a look at the material and the content. And I always talk about my stuff in various ways. To your point, people learn different ways. And so I come at the subject matter a little differently. So you can check that out. There's a book page. I've written 7 books around Be Different or Be Dead. You can always check that out. You use the word bold. My latest book is called The Audacious, Unheard of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales. So it's bold and audacious. Check that out. I'd appreciate it. I also have an email address. It's roy.osing@gmail.com. And I'm happy to talk to people about being different and all of this kind of stuff and provide whatever insights and just another set of eyes on work that people are struggling with. So take advantage of me in that respect. I guess the last word here is stepping out is always hard. Okay. It's always hard, but you never get anything truly rewarding if it's not hard. So have faith that there is gold at the end of the Be Different tunnel. Just give it a try.
Perfect. And I'll put all of your links and your email in the description box below so people can easily reach out to you. I encourage them to check out your books, all 7 of them, because in each book is going to be a progressive mindset. So you might be on book number 1 and maybe not on thinking on book number 7, but you go on that journey for change and to be different. And it's a step at a time, it's a book at a time, and to embrace it. Because if you just try to change everything all at once, then it's really difficult to see the progress, and the brain is going to have a hard time seeing that change too. So take it slow, take a step at a time. Don't be afraid to be different. Don't be afraid to challenge the quota, because when you do that, you're going to start to see that your life can be a little bit different in your own regards rather than what society or what the narrative is saying, because you get to choose what you want at the end. Thank you so much, Roy, for coming on Coaching in Session. Great conversation today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.